everyone should as a part of a creative act, should establish its studio in a way that is aware that that studio will be conditioned its work.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Current Art Podcast. I'm Yaching. And today we are connecting with somebody that is so far away from us, Alex Damboianu. Like, we are friends for a really long time, and we got to know each other in 2017. I know you as an artist, as an architect, but do you also have other titles, for example?
I do architecture, sound performances, and sometimes artworks, paintings. And I live in a abandoned factory somewhere in China, and here is my environment that is a source of inspiration also. Oh, the architecture part is very much useful and great for everyone, but there is a big difference between architecture and artwork. It feels like when I do architecture, it's like a tailor service. People tell you what they need. I need a building on this side, this size, made of these materials. The government has some rules for that area. There are budgets involved, all kind of stuff. So you're tailoring an object for someone. You're a tailor. But what I like to do is total freedom to create my own game. When I do my artworks, it is my game, my rules that I made. I'm like a farmer that grow his own apples and present them to at the market, right? It's a totally different system. So when I get sick of being a tailor, I would like to be a farmer, be an artist, and do my own stuff and show them. If someone understand and like it, that's great. If not, it's not a problem. It's not my business to convince people with my artwork.
It's a very interesting analogy that you are saying that architect is more like a tailor's job. You're serving other people's need. So you're making things for other people. And then artist is like farmer. You're farming your own land. But it seems to me that it's inevitable that you have to sell it. It's just in one form or another. This has to be like having
you have to sell it somehow, but there is a totally different approach.
What do you think is different?
It's different because when you do your artworks, you create your own rules for your artworks. When you do architecture, you receive the rules and you play the game.
Yeah, let's say you're free to grow your own vegetables, like as many as you wanted and as various as you wanted. But then isn't the market also decide upon what you're growing? Like,
yeah, decide, but in a weekend you're a tailor, so you don't give a shit.
I see. So you have to have like a double
in my
job.
case, in my case, yeah.
Yeah, but I think so you're looking at it very independently. So in the weekend you're architect, and then during the week you're an artist. But I think if money-wise those two things can separate, but then I believe during your practice I see a lot of like convergence, because You are working in such a big factory in Chongqing, which is in southern China, and you're working inside of a massive architecture. This factory is an old glass factory that produce artisan things, right? It's a very interesting relationships.
Yeah, this is an abandoned factory. So now we can talk about the proper environment for an artist, and how does the environment, how does the studio influence the work of or even create, is part of the artist's creation, the way he lives and the environment in which is active. So I feel everyone should as a part of a creative act, should establish its studio in a way that is aware that that studio will be conditioned, its work, the artist's work somehow. So I choose this place. I have some kind of romanticist approach to art, and I would like to observe how man-made objects and buildings and nature are fighting somehow with each other and are decaying, and they get birth and rebirth, and all this struggle is inspiring for me in my artwork.
Can you paint me a picture about your living experience? Like, how does the factory look like? And how does the factory look like from the distance? Like, is there people around you? I mean, the factory is your studio. It's also your living space. Like, how does it look like if you have to shoot a photography, like shoot a photo and then, or paint something?
For me, it's like a playground.
Yeah.
It is a huge building with many spaces and with abandoned machines and ovens for glass processing, offices that are abandoned, administrative buildings. Vegetation is trying to recover all these places. Different materials, decay, interesting textures everywhere. I like to work with metal. That is, I paint on the metal and then I let it rust. So there is a type of contingency all the time in my artwork. I don't need to, I want to get a little bit surprised of what is happening with the material after I work on it. So we'll get rust in different ways, and then I keep it, or I paint on it again and I let it rust. Sometimes I set them in fire. It's a process, a mix of slight control, a lot of contingency, environment observation, and giving new life for objects that they lose their function.
How big is your studio? Like,
I have one part of the studio where I collect the materials and I paint or I do together with Juan our artworks. Um, that part is around 200 square meters, but the factory is huge. I don't know, 10,000 square meters.
10,000 square meters.
I own the place where I have our bedroom and living room and kitchen, and then we have this studio space that is 200 square meters, and the factory. Nobody lives in a factory. The factory is owned by the government, and we just can work there or collect some leftover materials that nobody needs. But I don't pay rent for that.
Understand. So if I zoom out a little bit, if I try to paint a picture, it's like a huge abandoned area with vegetations growing in between, and like feels like those big warehouses and big factories, and they're over maybe 10,000 square meters, and in the middle somewhere that you have your 200 square meter studio. But it's quite abandoned, so you can go anywhere to collect things. But nobody knows it. Nobody still need those things.
Yes, yeah, they're abandoned. Yeah.
That itself is a very interesting living situation, actually.
The purpose there is a choice to live here. The point is to occupy this space and be active in this space, and as a space you choose to be in, that resonate with your spirit somehow, so that you can create your artwork. Of course, need to adapt a lot, but adapting to this place is also part of the creative process.
That is interesting. It seems like your life and then your creative life is closely associated.
It must be, right? You can the place you live or the how your being is constituted cannot be separate from your objects that you create.
That is very, very true. And then it's getting even more interesting if you would zoom out a little bit more. So let's see, we have a camera up on the sky, then we zoom out, and then we zoom out to the city of Chongqing. It's actually a very interesting picture. I've never been there before, but you know, I know that it is a big city, right? There is a lot of like business going on. There is like so many modern shopping malls. Like people have their entertainment there, and then it's also a huge touristic spot. So, you know, outside is capitalism. It's a consumer society in which people buying things, selling things, and then very much depends on that ideology.
Yes. And what is interesting about this city is that it is a giant city. 32 million people are living here. But in the same time, the cultural aspect of this city is really, really weak. Almost nothing happens here in this area. So I don't mind. It is interesting to see this thing. Of course, I miss other places where I lived and I had a rich social interaction and many things happened culturally. But this is a place where you can create artwork and then you can show it in another places.
I think you are right, because in the middle of those industrial like locations, you actually find sort of like peace and calm and emptiness. So then we create.
But I found this also in the middle of the shopping mall.
Interesting.
Because it's just noise, but I'm still alone. I don't understand anything because they speak Chinese and they don't understand me. There is no, it's like I'm in a forest, it's the same thing.
That is so funny, that this analogy that you said, standing inside of the shopping mall is like standing inside of the forest. You said before that the environment that you are living in reminds you of your childhood. What is your childhood looks like?
I grew up in a small city in the middle of the country in Romania. And it's a pretty industrial city with kind of Soviet type buildings. After the 1989 revolution, all the industrial projects pretty much stopped. Most of the factories, they were abandoned and then sold for cheap money to, different friends of the politicians. A lot of corruption. So there was a period where the industry was not working at all. There were many abandoned places. And we as a children, we go out in the morning and come back in the night and play in this type of industrial and mix with the natural environment. And yeah, we collect like now we collect all kind of stuff and we play with them all day. But we're happy all the time. The kids were out. We play. We create our own games, and actually the feeling that we had almost every day when we discovered different places was like somehow remind me of Tarkovsky's film Stalker, where you have these mysterious places where you don't know what was there, what was the function, what happened, abandoned places. It was an adventure all day. So I remember that feeling, that mix of curiosity and fear. That is very interesting for me.
It's interesting you mentioned fear, because I have never heard you mentioning it. And in your work, I saw type of brutalism, like brutal architecture and brutal buildings. Where does this fear coming from?
From being self-aware of a human condition. There is always a background fear in which we sometimes, there are ways to not focus on it, but it's still there all the time. Existential fear.
I think fear itself is a very interesting subject because it's almost unknown. So what I'm asking you is really an invalid question, like what are you afraid of? Like what is your fear? Like so many years ago, I think almost in 2017, I was with one of my friends in Beijing, and we were talking about visual languages, and we were talking about making art is to present something that is not presentable by the languages. So if I can verbalize this fear, I probably don't need to make anything about it anymore. It's so obvious and it's so plain. It's so translatable. I think we make artwork is because that we couldn't verbalize those things. We couldn't put it in any form, but a form for our own. Yeah, it's a very interesting talk, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's very good, and I would end it here. Thank you so much for listening to the Current Art Podcast. We are available on YouTube Podcast, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Pocket Podcast. See you next Sunday, and ciao ciao.